Out of Cruel Space, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 36. For Newest England. So there goes the plume of steam. The lake should be cooling in a bit, Helen notes as they fly over towards Lake Orthonaga. Should cool quickly too. Most of those rivers would freeze solid if not for the sheer tritite content in them, Mechi says from his spot in the back. At his size, it's like having an entire plush couch to himself, so he's not complaining about not having shotgun. I know, it makes the water look like it's out of a bad video game. Dis adds in as they crest over the final hill and see the steaming lake that's clearly overfilled in the distance, but the whole surrounding area is so inundated with tritite already that the bright blue water can barely be made out on top of it. Thank whatever watches over this world that the lake was too inundated with tritite for anything beyond microbial life. That station is the central pillar around which an entire flying city can be built with a gun on the kind of scale that planets get a cold sweat. And I can't see it, Mechi says. Probably the only place on the planet he could hide it. Let's not kid ourselves. He chose this world for exactly that reason. The man may have claimed to be here for the tea, but once he found a variant that grew so rapidly it was regarded as a weed, he just needed to look around. That silly plant is on half the planets along the lane this system is nearest to. That's easily 1,000 worlds to choose from. No, he's here because he can get away with a stupidly big move like this, and goddess damn if he isn't doing it. Well, if you're going to do something, do it in style, Helen says as she brings out a thermal sensor out of the glove compartment and cracks open her door to lean out. After a few moments of pointing at the somewhat distant lake, she looks at the number. Dropping fast. If they haven't scanned this area already, then he's already got it. And the survey is? Dis asks as he looks back to where Mechi has plugged a pair of headphones into a listening device. As his communicator starts chiming out, God save the king, queen in his heart, he misses the old girl. And he answers it. Master's delivery. All things from tea to monarchy. He answers in a very glib tone. He's having a very hard time keeping a smile off his face. He's having a wonderful time. Easily spotted and intimidated opponents? Check. Poor fire control on their part? Check. Finally, so few of them seem to have any instinct for cover. At this rate, he could take the station in his sleep. Hey boss, we have an interesting development on the information front, Mechi says. Good interesting or bad interesting? Funny interesting. Turns out that the girls had a lot of mess in their systems, subtle sabotage kind of stuff, and the mess we sent out to scramble them got caught up and gunked with all that mess too. They'll need a goddess to give them a handy if they want to unscramble their stations in time. You're looking good and clear. Also, the lake's cooling off quick proper. No more steam, and in a minute the water will be cool enough to swim in. Mechi reports. Capital. At this rate, we'll have the station in time for tea, Philip remarks happily, before dipping his head to the side, and his personal force field flares up as the laser he just avoided thermally blooms and spreads out more like a mushroom along its path. Excuse me, it seems my dance partners are far from accommodating to basic courtesy. They need some chiding. Give them hell, boss. I'll be giving them a talking to, Philip remarks before he squeezes the trigger on his coil gun, and several lives are cut short. At Mach speeds. Pardon me. He doesn't run, he jogs. It's much more controlled and with considerably less jostling. Keeping his aim strong and steady, it assists with the ending of 3 more lives. The second to last caused a panic which incited a woman far more bold and intelligent to rush out guns blazing, and as is typically the result, dying quickly. Some people can get away with that, but there's a method. You need to sweep the room weapons first and ensure that if anyone is there, they're looking down the barrel of your weapon before they see anything remotely resembling a vital. Usually only after you've softened the room with a flash grenade, smoke bomb, or a regular grenade. He whistles softly and tosses in a flashbang into the next room, and waiting for it to go off in the collective scream before he finally rounds the corner, and with a few quick squeezes of his coil gun, shatters several weapons. He waits a moment as they start to pick themselves up. Good afternoon, ladies. Can everyone hear me? One of them tries to use her weapon before realizing it was thoroughly destroyed and throwing it at him. He shoots the weapon out of the air and angles the shot to carry through her as well. Her death scream focuses everyone nicely. Now that I have your attention, I am looking for a volunteer, preferably one of you girls with rank insignia. Come on now, my dear stiff upper lip, on your feet. The Tret woman slowly rises up and looks at him in fear. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Who we work for? Vatras Shun, noted pervert, war lady, tyrant, and overall buffoon. I have safely scuttled a full fourth of her heavy artillery in a single afternoon. Imagine what I can do if I give her a full week of my undivided attention. Scuttled. Then, where are we? The sensors and communications all went dark. We're on the planet, or should I say inside it, Philip says, and there's a gasp. Now then, you are an officer of command, yes? I am. Good. Otherwise, I would ask whose uniform you've stolen. I can restore the communications to an extent. If I do so, will you stand down the rest of the soldiers? They don't need to die today. Do you have any idea how badly outnumbered you are? At most 2,000 to 1, Philip says. Ha! Shows what you know there are. 3,000 active crew members on this station, not counting maintenance. I know. I kept a tally of the casualties so far. Philip says softly. 2,000 left? As far as I'm aware, your armored divisions sold themselves dearly against my turrets. That was you. It is. I've laid more down. More? Yes, more. He answers slowly, walking up to the woman. Now, are you willing to offer your surrender? Will you stand down your people so that they may live? This is an honorable surrender. I have torn your base from the sky, slaughtered many of your forces, and am prepared to sweep through the rest. You can save them. You can spare them, Philip tells her, and she stares at him in horror. Well, do you care for your fellows enough to surrender? All hands, this is Officer 2nd Rank Misha Dartwin. The station is officially in enemy hands. We have been offered the option of honorable surrender. I am ordering you all to stand down and spare your own lives. The station is no longer in orbit. Our enemy controls our communications, our engines, and is the only one aware of our location. They have already confirmed the deaths of thousands of our forces. We are surrendering. Power down your weapons. Depart your armor and proceed towards the loading bays. There is a dead silence as the announcement echoes throughout the ship. Then the speakers crackle, ever so. Hello there. I am your captor this day. I would like to commend you all for courage in the face of an unknown and untenable situation, but I must insist you follow the commands of Officer Dartwin. Anyone I find holding a weapon or piloting mechanized armor of any sort will be killed on sight. I've already dropped the sky, killed thousands, and started a war. If you think I'm frightened of a little more blood, then you, my friend, are clearly inebriated and need to lie down, in which case you should still put the weapon down and leave the armor, because it's not wise to sleep with either. This is insane. There's no way that, Shelley says, even as falling starts trailing smoke in midday signify entire stations being reduced to scrap metal in orbit. Billions of credits in military infrastructure vanishing in moments as she watches her troops move out from the operations room. He did it. Crazy fucker did it. Commander, move the troops in. Our shuttles are shielded from orbital sensors and are rated for relatively shallow water exercises. Do we have communication with the women and the madman on the inside? Sir, we have contact. The protein-based communications they shielded are still fully effective. All right, I want to hear it from the madman himself. Put him on, Shelley announces. Ah, hello. Glad to hear you're fully on board, Philip says. You had doubts? Of your character? No, but I always embrace for disappointment. Just in case, Philip says. I've effected the surrender of 2/3 of the combat-ready forces. The turrets chew through the vast majority of armored opposition, but the command crew and non-armored soldiers are in a fairly large force. They will need to be detained and questioned. Yes, we have the cells for this. We can hold them safely, Shelley says as she comes to parade rest. She smiles. I would also like to report that the stations are waging war with one another. 3 of the other stations are already breaking apart in the sky above us. The night side of Lavaron is witnessing a beautiful meteor shower, even as the Vatras scream themselves hoarse at each other. Excellent. Commander, the stations are firing again, one of the girls announces. How many hits? 4. Commander, the Vatras they're in balance again? Confirm that, soldier. Remaining 4 stations are 1 to each Vatras. Damnation, I'll need to get creative, Philip mutters. You just hijacked an entire space station and fought an army alone. What is that if not creative? Audacious. Stealing a space station is audacious. Creative will require something more, Philip says as he considers. I was really hoping for an imbalance. Are they charging their weapons again? No, sir. The viral attack has been defeated. They're just screaming at each other now and accusing fast and heavy. Pity. Well, we secure our winnings for now and build up a little more. I'll keep poking them to see if I can't get them to kill each other as I come up with something more. Philip remarks. What are you thinking? Well, the obvious answer seems to be a null generator drone. Get one cloaked, fly it up all nice and subtle, and attach it near the engines of a station. Set it off on maximum power, and even if they regain control before they hit the ground, they'll be in an easy position for the other stations to easily fire upon without retaliation, creating a massive imbalance in power and forcing the unlucky Vatras to defensive measures. Or a cloaked orbital bomb. An unexpected blast in the right place and time can do a world of wonders, or at the right speed. But that's for later. Right now we need to finish taking control of our lovely new station. How close are the reinforcements? Etta, 2 minutes. Excellent. I'll greet them in the northern-facing docking bay, Philip says cheerfully. Is there anything you'd like me to take care of in particular? I'm afraid that even with my skills, that 2 minutes isn't quite enough time to dispose of all the bodies, carbon scoring, dents, and other such unpleasantness due to battle. I think they'll be fine if the station isn't shining, which is a failure on my part. Next time I have guests over, I'll have it good and clean, Philip remarks with a sigh, and a scoff races right past Shelley's lips before she can stop it. Philip lets off a soft chuckle in reply. But I digress. I will greet them in the docking bay. And there they go. Helen notes as the cloaked transports float overhead as they sit at the banks of Lake Orthanaga. No call for reinforcement, help, or emergency assistance had shown up. It was just the cleanup crew, and that was that. In an afternoon, the man had suddenly evened the playing field between himself and 4 entrenched dictators. His preparation time was maybe 2 weeks at most, including travel time. Damn, that's a nutsoid mineral content, Machi says as he swirls the lake water in his vial, and with the separating agent, it causes all the tritite to settle nearly instantly. It's over half full of the sky blue metal. This lake is literally more tritite than water by volume. No wonder nothing can live in it. It's an unending wet sandstorm. That's why it's perfect. You need the exotic axiom techniques and tech to pierce that much interference, Dis states. Anyways, we may not be needed for assistance, but we should probably join our friends in there. Take a look at the spoils. You just want to test the submersible mode for the air car, Helen accuses him. Can you blame me? No, but I can call you out on hogging the driver's seat, she says, and invisible or not, she knows he just rolled his eyes at her. She then catches the keys that he tosses her way. Thank you. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 37. For Newest England, the still fully operational barriers of the station keep out the tritite-laden water with ease, but also allow in the transports which float down and land in formation. The old colors fly once more. Good to see you, girls. They emerge in old armored vests and helmets designed for prolonged urban combat, many of them freshly painted to hold the old banner of Lavaron. Bright sky blue and a wreath of dark green leaves surrounding a trinity of white rectangles forming a triangle. The abundant tritite of the world, its lush vegetation, and its 3 virtues of stoicism, community, and honesty. Sir, the first company reborn reporting in, the platoon woman leading them states, and he snaps off a salute. Good to have you, Commander. As you all likely know, I am Sir Philip. I am responsible for the location of this station and will require your assistance to fully take it over. You ladies are going to be piloting and eventually using this powerful weapon to strike a killing blow against the Vatras and their despotic rule. Now, there may still be 4 others remaining in orbit, but I'll be taking care of that soon, Philip says. Now please, come with me. We need to finish effecting the surrender of the surviving guardswomen on this station, take full control of it, and clean up the slight mess I made. At this point, a familiar aircar flies through the tri-tight drenched water outside and lands next to a transport. "Hello, my students. Here to help?" "Well, seeing as you didn't need any for the actual fight, we figured we'd be useful now," Helen says. "What? Come on, you tall idiot. You two were useless. I made that monster virus that crippled the communication channels, and a whole whackload of turrets for him, and the fork bombs. And those tall ones, as you call them, helped implant the virus and ensure that even if things hadn't gone so well, that we still would have made amazing progress." Philip chides Mechi. Sure, but it was my virus. Mine." "Yes, Mechi, it was very well programmed. An excellent cut-and-paste job from the hacktivist network sites." "Oh, you know about those." "I do. I find it excellent reading, although greatly lacking in a consistent tone, the downside of a community-led project." Philip confirms and Mechi just nods. "Anyways, this way, please. Do be careful around the corpses. Blood can be both slicker and sticker than expected when underfoot," Philip says as he starts leading people in. Officer Lyman had woken up not long after the landing and was in a berserk but ultimately impotent fury. He was a person who used Axiom for his everything, so when he couldn't just use Axiom to get things done, he had no ability to actually do things, beyond amuse the engineering staff who had taken to doodling all over him. He was a dick across 4 languages, not including galactic trade, and had so many different varieties of penis drawn on his face that his mugshot could be put in a urologist textbook and only barely look out of place. Everything had gone still, and nothing any of the scanners pointed outwards told them anything. They were truly in Lake Orthanaga. So much tritite on every side they were basically coated in it. Internal sensors were another story, though. The atmospheric sensors they had access to let them know there were smoking corpses dotting all over the station. Even if each area was only a single person dead, it was still hundreds down. No one wanted to think about how many of them knew those women. Yes, they were Shun's bootlicks and would have likely opened fire on them if they knew they were going treacherous. But it's hard to eat a meal with someone, even if only once or twice, and not think of them as a person instead of another. There was already some talk of regret, but most of the girls were just so damn sick of the Vatras that something was going to happen sooner or later, and since Philip showed up with an actual plan, they just went with his. Of course, saying it like that was insane as well, but everyone was so sick of nothing happening, things only getting worse and worse and worse, and any attempt to make things better sabotaged by the immovable Vatras that the first chance to get rid of them seemed to be nothing short of divine providence. Not only were those wretched women terrible leaders, but their ideas on how to run things always boiled down to a brain-dead ideology, naked greed, and willful obliviousness of the damage they were causing. The door opening causes some mild concern, then a cheer as Philip is leading in numerous armed women with the old colors on. Something that hasn't been seen since the early years of the Vatras. And here is engineering, with my lovely assistants in the beating heart of any station, the engineers, without whom this could not have been possible, Philip says as he introduces the soldiers to them. "How did you convince the active engineering staff of an entire station to side with you? Honestly, with how the Vatras act, it would be harder not to. The only people those fools seem to have any care for are their loyal leg breakers, and that's about it. They've left me a very fertile ground to grow a full rebellion against them. If I weren't aiming for a much more efficient mode of attack at any rate," oh, Philip says. "Efficient? The Vatras have more guns. It's better if they shoot at each other than at me," Philip notes. "Considering we passed hundreds of dead people on the way down here, I don't think you need to worry about being in a shootout, sir," the soldier with Philip says, and he laughs it off. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me, but no, I'm no immortal," he says with a smile. "Anyways, First Company Reborn, meet the engineers of this lovely station. They are the women you will be protecting and assisting in the maintaining and eventual full control of this place. For when we are ready, we will lift this station back into the heavens and turn its cannon outwards in defense of Lavaron. Let this beautiful world be safe once more, but first it must be de-infested of the wretched beasts within it. So how many? Renari asks. Vatra stations remaining? 4 total, 1 each. An annoying equilibrium I will be shattering shortly. No. How many died today? Many thousands. Not only did my turrets shred most of the armor on this station, but I gunned down quite a few remaining soldiers before I found an officer to stand the rest down. To say nothing of the casualties on the other stations. 7 in all, each with 3,000 troops upon them at least. A full shift of 50 engineering crew, janitors, officers, bridge crew, communications crew, and more. Many people have died. Because of us, Renari says as she closes her eyes to try and get a grip on that. It leaves an iron-like taste in her mouth. The guilt swells up and, because of me. I am the one who set all this in motion. The guilt is mine, Philip says. What you did was very brave and was more than can be asked of almost anyone. You're an engineer. While I can't expect you to deal with some excitement, it's mostly revolving around the occasional lubricant fire, fluid leak, or out-of-control piece of technology. Asking you to be so close to a place of combat is entirely unreasonable. But you performed with aplomb. Wait, each station has 3,000, and only a third of that is the soldiers in mech armor. The rest? Only a few hundred normal soldiers needed to die to me. The rest surrendered, and after I'm done with the Vatras will be released with full pay. What? Another girl asks. Why would you pay them? Simple, they surrendered. If I treat surrendered opponents well, then it encourages further enemies to just surrender, Philip says easily. Now then, does anyone want to help with the salvaging and cleanup of the station? If not, no hard feelings. There's a furious attempt to speak from Officer Lyman, and Philip quirks an eyebrow before sauntering over and looking down at him. A mildly amused smirk is across his face as he beholds the labeling and artwork the man has been subjected to. Philip removes the gag. What makes you think that you will get away with this madness? The fact I already have? The station is deep in the waters of Lake Orthonaga. It's so tri-tight dense there's no teleporting out, no matter how much time you take. You're already locked out of the system, and the water is so cold and so thick that even if you could hold your breath for an hour to try to swim for the surface, the sheer cold will kill you. And that's only if the crushing weight of all that tri-tight in water don't first. You have lost. Lake Orthonaga? We're in Lake Orthonaga? The whole place is cursed, you idiot. Nothing can live here. We need to leave. Now! Okay, I clearly need to take a look at the quality of local education. If people see a lake that's more metal than water by volume and think a curse is why there's no fish in it, Philip remarks as he steps back. Anything else? If you're polite, the gag stays off. Why are you doing this? Officer Lyman asks, and Philip smirks. Orders from home. 2 stars are to shine on the British Empire, which means that this world will be brought into the Commonwealth, which means no military tyrants, and that I will be working very hard against anything such as a famine, drought, or otherworldly aggression. It means that I will do everything in my power to assure a strong economy, stronger borders, and stronger still education. He breaks off the slight speech he's giving the entire room and looks pointedly towards Lyman. Clearly, the education is desperately needed. So you're just here because you're someone else's lapdog? Lyman asks. That your own Vatra sent you? Oh, how cute. You think that this is a simple situation? Adorable. It's nothing like that, Philip says. And what proof is there beyond your word? How do we know your empire won't just come here and be worse than the Vatras? If you're one of theirs and you're crazy enough to drop a space station into a lake with people still in it, then how could they possibly have even a lick of sanity? Philip glances around. There is some uncertainty. He merely smirks. Ladies of engineering, and my esteemed reinforcements of the first company, reborn both. You still have your proton-based communicators, I trust. Several of them pull out the devices. Look up Gandhi, a human leader who used pacifism to get England to secede control of India back to its native population. Look up the English war against the slave trade. Indeed, the information was hacked wholesale off the Dauntless and off the inevitable cruel space-borne firewalls, and anti-intrusion systems just don't hold up to the rest of the galaxy after all. which means that all the information was ripped out and displayed unadulterated and unedited. Look up British relations with its former colonies. While one of them did indeed violently tear itself away, others simply left. America had its War of Independence. And then sometime later, Canada simply walked out the door with a cheery wave farewell. This is important to note as those two countries are basically siblings, right next to each other, and with a truly massive border that is almost completely unmonitored. The simple fact of the matter, Lyman, is that not only am I not like your Vatras, but even with the opportunity to seize power as she has, I will not take it. For power as she has it is a clumsy, stupid, and unwieldy thing. My role after this will primarily be ceremonial. I'll set up a parliament for the people, tie-break votes as needed, root out corruption whenever I find it, and generally only involve myself in such affairs when there's an emergency. You'll forgive me if I don't believe you. You're forgiven. After all, it takes time for an education to sink, Philip says glibly. Now, time to head to the main bridge to see how well my adorable students are taking control of it. And that is how you make every computer your bitch, Mechi finishes explaining as the rebooted system first pings off the OS in the data chit he plugged in, enters its own passwords in without hiding them, and then starts up normally, but with a green barrier around the edges. And what if you can't get at the power or restart the system? Dis asks him. Things get a lot more complicated, but 99.999 and on for fucking ever percentile of the time, you just need to do this, Mechi insists. Cute, but what are we looking at, and why is the indicator a green hand flipping us off? Style. If you're going to do something, do it in style. Mechi answers. Fair enough, Helen replies. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 38. Adorable alterations, Mechi. Have they helped you control the systems? Philip asks as he enters the bridge, and his gob tech support and gadgeteer snorts. Have they helped me? They did all the work. We own this station now. I've already changed out all the passwords and stripped the biocoding out. By the way, I'm going to need you to give this thing an ocular scan and a hand scan, Mechi says before tapping a few buttons and a panel opens up to show an orb rising up. Just stare at it and hold on to it for a bit. Certainly, Philip says as he quickly grabs the orb and stares at it. As I do so, have you tried extending the main antenna yet? From my understanding of the dimensions of this station, it will be able to pierce the top of the lake. And let us start on the next step, then retract it to allow us to truly mystify our opposition. Next step? I thought this was damn near the last one. It was, until each of the Vatras was left with a fully intact station, which means we need a few more steps to totally declaw the cruel witches. Those stations are each a single button press away from erasing entire cities. I cannot let those lunatics hold on to that level of power. And you've already made them shatter 7 of them because you stole the 8th. So what next? Mechi asks. Next, I'm going to see if I can't terrify them into finishing each other off. The simplest solution to many problems is often the correct one. Things are only rarely as complicated as they look, Philip says before there's a beep. There we go, boss. You're in the system, Mechi says. Excellent. Thank you, Mechi. Now I have a message I'd like you to splice together, then send it under this ID. Philip instructs before holding out a communicator and bringing out a file. That is a very specific, wait a minute. That pattern, this is off an implant. Correct. Whose implant? Vatras Blythe. How in the actual fuck did you get that? Mechi demands. You know I carry recording equipment on me at all times. Philip chides him. Yeah, to catch something you might have missed. But you don't miss anything. You're well, fucking you, big man. Thank you, but there are some things I do miss, even when my senses do not fail me in the slightest. Such as things I cannot actually sense. Like a goddamn communication ID. You bastard. How close did you get to her again? I had her throat in my hand and could have taken her life with my gloves alone. But it was not the proper time, Philip says, and Mechi just stares at him. Of course. So this is right off the tap. Damn, anything I send from this will be tracked right back to her fucking head. Wait, that would... The message is a threat to Blythe that will be intercepted by the others. Fingers will point, Blythe in particular will go near feral in paranoia as a message to herself, from herself, will have the fingerprints of the other 3 Vatras all over it as it promises gruesome death, in offering her the choice of whether it's merely pain or pain at the hands of the man who got his hands on her, identifying me as their agent. Why is it? Oh, because of that, the Vatras, who are no doubt trying to find some trace of what's going on and finding a few whispers of me, will assume me an agent of their rivals and further proof that they need to strike now. Whispers of you, sir? Dis asks. No operational security is absolute. You always leave a trail. There is always a clue left behind, and the moment you assume there is none, you have set yourself up for capture. I assume the Vatras intelligence agencies are already slowly narrowing in on us, and we have a week at most before we are enduring retaliatory strikes. So we need to keep poking things. Do you never stop or sleep? Mechi asks. Of course I do, but currently I'm awake and in motion, Philip says. All right, so what's the exact threat we're sending out? Mechi asks, and Philip smirks. My Vatras, a message from your vanished station. It's using an unknown ID and is directed to itself, Officer Morney says, and Shun sighs in satisfaction. She had made the man a god over mortals after plucking him out of a dead-end career as a lounge singer before draping him in star yellow and shimmering gold. His rumbling voice was always a pleasure, doubly so when he was giving her some good news. Sensuality with skin wrapped around it. She has lost a great deal of power, but the others are equally damaged, and now opportunity is arising. Perhaps she has not lost as much as she thought. If the station could be found and reclaimed, she could easily bring her rivals to heel. Soon enough, Lavarin would be hers in its entirety. Read it out, she orders, both for information and to hear her lovely toy speak again. As a man, he was a little skinny, and his hair a little dull, for her taste. But oh, what a voice, like sex on silken sheets. Your days are so very few now, Blythe. My master sent me to strangle you, and now that you've had a taste, you can feel the appropriate fear. Pray to your goddesses. I am coming, and I have a lovely new station to murder you on. Morn reads out with more and more horror in his voice. They stole my station, but how? Who? Who could possibly have done such a thing? If the station is stolen, then where is it? If it's intact, then we would sense it. If it were anywhere in the solar system, I would see it, Shun exclaims, before adjusting herself in her seat, feeling that wonderful hardness between her cheeks. It calms her, knowing she still has control of these men, the most valuable kind of person. Send a signal to the antenna, get the location of my station. At once, my Vatras. What do you mean you cannot find it? It's a war station, an entire city built around a flying cannon. There are smaller meteors idiot children can locate in seconds. They don't just vanish into nothingness and then reappear to send a threat. Find it, Brahmastra screams in fury. Everything was falling apart. She had been building up armed forces in her stations for a massive sweep to take the others. And now? Even if she could make a perfect sweep, it would still be a pittance. It would barely bring her back to what she had before, to say nothing of all the loyal warriors who had been slaughtered. So the prospect of having a fifth, of somehow coming out ahead after all that? Yes, she would like that, thank you very much, which is why its current disappearing act is driving her mad. The stations are so big that they can be seen during the day. At night, any idiot can spot them, all with the unaided eye. How does anything like that vanish without being destroyed? I'm sorry, my Vatras, but one of her green-clad warriors begins, and she leaps over the railing and drops the woman with a single punch. She hoists the concussed woman over her own desk and sits down herself. Do I have to do everything, you incompetent twits? I don't pay you to fail, she screams as she starts looking into things before ramming her fist clean through the screen. Get some troops on the field. We're going to get our answers out of the other Vatras. Blythe seethed at the sight of the message. The threat was basic, childish even. It didn't even bother going into describing tortures or threatening her non-existent family. No description of how much she will lose, just a threat. Pathetic. But the fact it had ID'd itself as coming from her own implant, not to mention the information it gave out. The other Vatras were moving against her, and they wanted her out of the equation. Well, she wouldn't stand still and let it happen. That fucker had shown up in black and white, clearly trying not to give away which Vatras was his master. But Blythe is no fool. He is no reptile, so that's Melena out. Brahmastra is too bloodthirsty to play things long. But Shun, she might think of her men as nothing more than toys, but she would be the one to send a man. And wasn't it odd how easily that man got away? How he had vanished? She looks around, her hackles rising. There is a traitor in her midst, perhaps several. Everybody out. All action around the command center cease. They had just moved into the new area after leaving the compromised one behind. Now! They all move, and soon enough she's alone in the room. Her paranoia spikes again, and she begins to speak. I know you're listening. You must think you're so clever, so damn smart. After all, a man sent after me could only mean Shun. But it was her station that was stolen, she says before putting her hands up and prancing in a mocking pattern. Oh, but she could have double or triple bluffed and blah, 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 blah. No, they're not that smart. I am the only Vatros with a working brain. It was my tactics and strategies that took Lavarin and kept us out of the Empire's grasp. It is you, isn't it? Tell me, which great noble of the Empire sent you? Was it the Empress herself? Or were you... Yes, that's it. One of the other Vatras has betrayed the compact, sold herself back to the Empire, and thrown away everything we worked for. Her axiom-imbued fist mangled the guardrail, and she rips out a section before crumpling it up and spiking the dense ball of metal into the floor. She then pants before turning. The first step is to find the mole, which means she needs to sow different rumors among different groups and then narrow it down, and she leaves the room growling and glares at the girls just hanging around in the hallway outside. Back to work! We have a war to fight! So, Blythe was attacked by either Shun or Brahmastra. That explains her erratic behavior. But for them to get so close they managed to copy her implant ID code? Terrifying. Truly, but it doesn't fit either of them. Brahmastra would have killed her if she got an assassin that close, and Shun would not risk one of her precious toys. Melena considers as she reclines in her plush leather chair. Beyond meat, leather was one of the things mammals were better at. Soon this world would be one of cold logic and reason. No hot-blooded fool races to ruin things for their betters. Someone's trying to be clever, and if someone's trying to be clever, it's usually Blythe. But would she send herself a threat in order to get people pointing fingers? Melena considers. Perhaps I should ask that lovely guest of mine. Jericho Dawn is rather well put together for a mammal, and he has certainly ranted about another mammalian male that sent him to me, which, while concerning, is still very intriguing. It was clearly an attempt to frame and agitate, but by whom? Then she smiles as it all falls into place. Of course, it makes perfect sense. It's none of them. They're not smart enough. They're mammals, after all, incapable of such cunning. Most can't even follow simple instructions. No, one of my girls is trying to curry favor. It's adorable, really, the sort of thing a dew-eyed hatchling would do. I'll have to find out who, if they have that kind of creativity and audacity, then no matter who's responsible, I need to reevaluate them. Make sure they're in their best position. And with the antenna only above the waterline for a single second, I dare say we might have gotten away with it. Keep an eye out and be ready to evacuate if the other stations reorient their cannons this way. The Vatras are not the type who enjoy sharing their toys, Philip says. We're not going to fight for this station, sir? We've done all the fighting I'm willing to tolerate for this station for now. The main thrust of today's efforts was to disarm the Vatras as thoroughly as possible, and we have both succeeded and failed in that regard. Still, as they react to our little bit of entertainment, I'm going to head out and see if I can't do a little more as I ponder a proper plan of approach, Philip states before flicking a little bit of hair away from his eyes. Excuse me, please. And what will we do? Dis asks. Come with me if you please, or don't. I'm going to be moving quickly, and this is going to be strictly voluntary, Philip says, and 5 minutes later all four of them are buckling up in the air car. Mechi had rushed ahead and claimed front seat passenger, and the gloating was most unseemly, but very amusing. Out of cruel space, into a wider galaxy, Part 39, for newest England. So how does one destabilize a quartet of warlords beyond what you've already done? Helen asked. Oh, that's quite simple. Just more of the same, really, with increased audacity. I've just hinted to Blythe that I have a great hidden master, so I'll convince her even more that my dread master is on approach to make her paranoid and irrational, while I ensure that it's public enough that the other three see it. Then I give each of them some special attention. For instance, if Shun finds out that I've sent one of her men to another Vatras, she should take that fairly poorly, and I'm honestly surprised she's done nothing yet. A bit of anti-reptile propaganda and Milena should be on the hunt for a victim. And if I get some of Brahmastra's girls in position, it should be plenty entertaining. And how will you, write the handsome man routine? I did not ask for the gifts I was born with. I simply use them as best as I am able, Philip remarks. Besides, back home it would be very much reversed. If you could pass for human at any rate, a reptile woman on Earth would have sent the theorists into a foaming frenzy. Wait, some humans actually believe there's a reptilian species on their world? Helen asked. Oh yes, seeing you two without your natural stealth would send those men and women absolutely manic, Philip concerns. Still, the issue with dealing with a situation involving a great many people is that it's often quite fluid. So the first step is to figure out the fifth step? Michi mocks. You don't repair a machine by just breaking it open and replacing random parts. You first have to evaluate the damage. Philip chides him. Why do you have to make so much sense? Sometimes I wonder myself. Philip jokes. Still, we're heading off to Tauren City for a change of clothing, and then a few cameras for me to wave at. What kind of clothing? A fair question. Do you think I'd look better in blue, green, or yellow? Green is best, Michi states. I told you to stop indulging in that silly hobby. Philip chides the gob and gets a raspberry blown at him. Very mature. My Vatras, we found him, one of her techs suddenly says. Where? Blythe responds instantly. He's in Tauren City, meeting with a Cloaken and a Kobe. Well, don't just stand there. Get the bastard. I want him nailed to the floor and helpless before me. Blythe howls even as the image of the bastard appears on screen. The artfully groomed man looked like he was receiving orders. A vaguely visible hand with colorful scales across it was handing him a datapad as a Kobe with dark blue scales was handing off a small case. Tucked behind the ear of the man was a bright blue Laruva flower. Milena, Blythe growls out. Of course. Who else but that cold-blooded bitch would try something like this? Clever of her to have her people hire a mammal. Keeps her hands away from us. Send a force to watch him. I need to think. This situation needs to be handled delicately. Blythe orders before marching off the platform and all the way to her new quarters. His snout twitches at the smell of the drying paint. This entire facility has freshly made. A new location entirely. After her old one was compromised so fully, she enters her office, barely even noticing the massive guards to either side of the entrance. Behind her desk was an image of Lavaron, a massive atlas. A touch of Axiom, and her boots meet the top of her desk as she churns over the issue. It's so obvious. No one benefits from the loss of the stations but the Empire, and we're down to a third of our former power. How will we keep them out? How will we keep the vultures from eating us alive? No, she dismisses the idea. It would be too dangerous. And the price? It would not be something she could order one of her girls to do. There were lines that were just not crosses, and forcing one of her women to sell her soul was too far. Even for her. Even for me, Blythe says, and something burns in the back of her throat. She pauses in the habitual swallowing of the emotion and lets it sit, rolling it in her mouth. Bitter regret. So many regrets. This was supposed to be good. A beautiful break away from the Empire and all its stupid backbiting and madness. Instead, she found herself in a knife fight with everyone forever circling each other. Stupid, pointless, and destructive. She could lead an army. She could outmaneuver enemy forces and rile up her troops into a frenzy. She had turned her size into an advantage. She could fight like a Lopen and lead them into battle. Her small size just made her hard to hit. A look of absolute disgust and self-loathing crosses her face for a moment. Where had it all gone wrong? She wanted a land where her soldiers could actually relax and not endlessly have to justify their own damn pay. Milena wanted to divest herself and her followers of petty politicking, backbiting, and irrational madness. Shun wanted love, and Brahmastra wanted the challenge. How terrible victory was. The lump of emotion in her mouth is too bitter to bear and too big to ignore. For just a moment longer she pauses, then swallows it whole. She needs to focus. Shun, Milena, and Brahmastra are the enemies. One of them has clearly sold out to the Empire as infiltrators, on the level of the one that hit her didn't just show up out of nowhere and would have been hitting for years at this point. Unless he's new. If he's new, then he's likely still very eager and gung-ho, likely unable to resist an overly tempting target, she mutters as she paces along the top of the desk. And if I were to get my hands on him, then I would be able to get answers out of him. But he will see my troops coming, see anyone I send deliberately, and like all big problems, just stating them leads to a proper answer. She hops down into her chair and sits down in it comfortably. A press on a button along the outside of the armrest, and a hologram lights up and she smiles at her secretary. And sometimes the easiest solutions are the best. Send an image of the man who broke into my base to the bounty hunting guilds. Yes, including the ones in the Empire. 50 million credits for him to be brought to me alive and capable of answering questions. Blythe orders and her accountant nods. All right, now I need to play defense. This is an endurance game. And this, my dear students, is why you must regard even certain situations as extremely fluid, Philip says as he turns over his communicator and reveals that there is a bounty on his head. The hologram around Mechi that makes him look like a dark blue kobe grins widely and shows more teeth than is ever supposed to be in the mouth of any kobe or gobe. Philip is going to have to explain the difference between disguise and costume again, isn't he? Time for some entertainment. Entertainment? 50 million is enough to bring people over from several systems away to strike at you. You're going to be dodging sniper fire. Yes, and I have a strict return policy when it comes to enemy fire, Philip says. This will increase the chaos and can be easily dealt with. After all, bounties can be paid off, and every hunter that isn't a complete nitwit keeps an up-to-date list on anything in the area that's local. Meaning I just need to drop some money on an office to suddenly have whoever's out to get me to turn around and go the other way. Some of them are in it for the thrill of the hunt. Yes, those are called idiots, easily identified by having more trophies than weapons. The actually dangerous ones have more weapons than trophies and have a wonderful trait known as being bribable, Philip remarks. And if they're a huntsmistress that's decided to take up more dangerous game, and aren't you the least bit concerned that the bounty specifies it's to bring you in alive and able to answer questions? Not particularly. I've long stopped trying to count the number of times an egomaniac would have been better served just shooting me rather than dragging me into the heart of their power to try and boast and gloat. Sure, they have a great deal of leverage in such situations, but they also leave themselves incredibly vulnerable. How many missions were you sent on again, sir? The speech my employer gave at my retirement part included the words, too many and beyond all reason. And how many times did you get captured? Honestly, it felt like the only opponents who could make it interesting were those that could. After that, I would get an interesting speech and possibly a meal, followed by a daring escape, or I'd just skip to the escape and then proceed directly to the final bit of shooting and sabotage. The movies really were underselling it. The movies are on the routine end of my more fantastical missions, Philip corrects. Still, we're in one of them now. After all, most enemies have the good grace to roll over and die after I've done an absurd free-falling stunt followed by a massacre. In this case, it seems to hardly be the 2/3 mark. Mechi starts cackling so hard his disguise wavers. Philip examines his nails and extracts some grime from beneath them with a toothpick as he waits for his small technician and student to finish. It takes 3 minutes and 42 seconds. May I continue? Philip asks. There's more? Well, we haven't discussed employing and subverting the bounty hunters yet. Oh my God in heaven, is everything to your advantage? Dis asks him. Yes, and with a little more training, it will be to yours as well. Still, we've gotten a reaction out of Blythe. I believe it's past time we remind Shun that she's missing someone. Are we sure we're the heroes in this situation? Because we're going down a villain checklist, Helen asks. Most media likes to portray heroes as reactive rather than active. Intelligence requires a balance between both. We're currently being active, Philip says. Anyways, speaking of being active, it's time to make a woman pine for a man I kidnapped and sent of to his likely death. You're actively fucking with us, Dis states. Always, it's part of your training. I hate how much sense that makes. Lady Vatras, there. We have an issue, Officer Morn says, and she raises an eyebrow. As he's trained, he walks up with a data slate and holds it for her so she can see his pretty face while examining the message. Only it's not. It's a single image of Jericho Dawn, and on it is black writing. We have him. Where did you get this? She asks as her pupils narrow in focus. It's one thing for one of her men to be taken. They're very, very beautiful after all, and when they're rescued, they're always so very appreciative. But this? We shot down a small drone. It was shaped like a local bird and flew directly at our base. It was carrying a reinforced package that resisted the attack. Inside was only this picture, Officer Morne explains as she leans forward and scowls. Was anything else recovered from this drone? No, the rail shot shattered all other components. We're trying to source them, but nothing exotic was found so far. Morn states, and she lets out a slight growl. Then she rises up. So I need to fight to maintain what is mine again. Very well. I was content to simply wait for a ransom and then killing the ransomers after Jericho was safe. But if they wish to play this way, then I will have this entire planet torn inside out to find him. She unsheathes her claws and prowls forward as Morn shifts to the side to let her go. Her seat rises up behind her, and her left and right hands match her pace. It's time we reminded this world that I am more than just a woman with a deep love for men. I am a Vatras. I am a queen of war. I am a bringer of death, and any who dares to touch what is mine will feel the fullness of my wrath. Out of Cruel Space into a Wider Galaxy, Part 40, for Newest England. An explosion rocks the automated combat walker and sends the nearest soldiers scrambling for cover. The source had been a rocket the hell out of nowhere in an old building that was even now being reduced to rubble under the sheer weight of laser fire. None of them are aware that the culprit is actually 4 blocks away and hosting a small party for himself and his comrades. Once again, Mechi, my dear friend, whipped cream is not for tea. Philip chides him, and the gob turns around to stare at him. Then he downs the entire thing in a single swig. Philip visibly shudders at the sight. Really, boss? That's what makes you flinch? I've sent damn rail shots so close to your head that it could have kissed you and got a whole lot of nothing, Mechi says with a giggle before he pulls out his whipped cream can and pours himself another cup before topping it off with a massive swirl. Disgusting, Philip notes before looking away deliberately to the amusement of the half-sized Cretan. He takes a bracing pull of his own black tea and indicates the massive shootout that Brahmastra's forces are having with an already scrapped drone that had spent the entirety of its firepower on its first shot. Halt! A voice bellows out as a suit of armor decloaks and drops onto the roof near them, then promptly crashes through each floor down to ground level. Everyone move very slowly and head for the edge. The wall will offer more support, Philip says in a tightly controlled tone to hide just how amused he was. Good thing we didn't break out the fine china, Helen says, struggling not to laugh, as this can be seen with the indentation of his face and his gloves as he holds back his own amusement. Mechi has no such restraint and has to be spoken over. Or perhaps around. Good thing I can 3D print with ceramics now. It makes producing and replacing tea sets very simple and cheap, Philip remarks as he carries the pot and his own cup over to the edge. And he still saves the tea. Of course, Dis remarks as he carries his own over. The crashing and clattering sounds from the long-abandoned apartment complex continue until the woman finally clears enough space around herself to actively tell which way is up, and she rockets upwards just through all the floors and roof again. 3 out of 10, she's got moldy old curtains tied to her, Helen says, and it looks like she found septic pipes, Mechi adds. Dis just makes a disgusted sound as Philip wrinkles his nose. The dark green armor lowers itself to hovering above them, but not directly above them, thankfully, and shining a massive light at the 4 of them. What are you doing here? Are you responsible for the attack on our forces? Madam, I was hosting a little party for my friends and myself. Odd place to party. We're urban explorers. In those outfits, one's hobbies is no excuse to be sloppy, Philip says. And speaking of sloppy, do you honestly have nothing in the way of self-cleaning effects on that armor? Combat readiness is more important than aesthetics. It's not just about aesthetics, dear Godwoman. It's about ensuring your equipment doesn't rust or rot on you. You wash your clothing for a reason, Philip says before pausing and looking right into her main camera lenses. You do wash your clothing, I hope? I do, the soldier protests. Then exactly that, Philip says smugly. Now, what is it you want? Why did you disrupt our little party? Did you do it? Do what? You mentioned an attack earlier, but in what manner? Did it have something to do with the explosion not long ago? Philip asks. How can you not know? The soldier demands. I don't know. One moment I was treating my dear friends to a lovely drink and snack, and then the next there's an explosion, and now we're speaking with you after you've shattered the building Philip begins to explain before more of the roof gives way, and the table, scones, biscuits, and plates all fall below, shortly followed by the chairs. Philip gives out a long-suffering sigh at that. Now, the soldier tries to continue as the chair clatters a bit more. More clattering interrupts her, and she just stops trying to talk as the bouncing and breaking furniture slowly comes to a rest. Who are you? She asks. I am Kevin Wetsworth, Philip says. And the cloakin' with you? The gobe? Sup, I'm Nubby Nubs, Mechi says, and Philip resists a grin. At least he's reading good literature along with the bad. Then he frowns ever so slightly. Wait a minute. He glances towards Mechi, who's got a familiar smirk on his face. Little bastard is baiting him. He's proud. I am Karl Franz, Dis states, and Philip nearly sighs. They're all ganging up on him. I am Amberly Vale. Helen says to complete the treachery, and when he can't retaliate no less, he's taught them well. And why are you on the roof in this condemned part of town? We're urban explorers. Finding out liminal spaces is fascinating. There's a kind of bleak beauty to such things, Philip says. Oh, really? Yes. So you trespass in dangerous places for the sake of it? She demands. Nothing of the sort. If we see a sign telling us to leave, we leave. But we saw none, Philip says, and the soldier just stares at them. Leave now, she orders them before blasting away. She leaves behind a small drone and it begins scanning them. Philip nods before using a touch of axiom to leap to the building roof across the road, not spilling his drink, and begins to pour himself a cup as he waits for the others to land around him. It doesn't take long. They don't need to talk as they get a bit more distance. All four of them aware of the drone before it turns around and departs for the soldier again. So what does that prove? Mechi asks. Oh, Brahmastra's going to be looking for an opponent now. She's going to find the turret, but it was made in a slapdash style that can be replicated anywhere. This is going to legitimately confuse her, for now, but it will confirm that there is a great enemy, and her looking for it, or rather her method of looking for it, will provoke the others. Now we just need one last little touch. Milena needs some attention. There is a deadly silence as Milena looks down at the woman. She hadn't found however she had that was trying to impress her. But she had found an idiot taking bribes. She was not only taking bribes, but she was taking bribes from a criminal to cover up the crimes. At a time like this, she learns that some absolute maniac has been running around in one of her cities and making coats out of people. And all of it was being covered up. How and why was beyond her, but she didn't care. The moment the witch made a snakeskin coat out of a poor Nagasha woman, and her fate was sealed. Her former employee tried to make excuses, but at this point Milena cannot even hear her speak. It's just senseless noise. At her gesture, her guards drag the idiot away, and she presses a few buttons. The city is in lockdown. Things are over and done with. Every mammal, piscine, avian, and insect are forced into their proper places. No one is getting away. No one is getting out. And when she finds out exactly what species this serial killer belongs to, they will suffer as well. She will make an example out of them all. The city slams down around them, and they are forced into a safe house. Something is happening. More chaos? Good. Chaos he's unaware of? Not so much. No mammal is allowed on the street, so Philip and Mechi are going to be persecuted on sight. However, reptiles are still permitted. Well then, my agents, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to quickly find out why the lockdown is going on and if it can be used to our advantage. And if it can be, Dis asked. Do so. I want you both to surprise me. I will go back to ensuring the other three Vatras are at the edge of madness at their most comfortable. You both are on Milena harassment duties. Ensure that you do not get caught or injured and leave civilians out of this. Philip states, and he receives a pair of nods. And children? Yes, Helen asks. Have fun, Philip says. The knife was calling. It was ready. It needed to be satisfied and fulfilled. There was nothing more important than the beautiful song of the knife, the sound of flesh parting beneath practiced care and lonely lights. Nothing made sense more than the knife, and only the knife made sense. Everyone pining for the little tokens designed to be traded for scraps of food and cloth. Everyone pining for the continuation of a bloodline when they all just did the same things as before, going on forever for no point or purpose. But the knife had purpose. Its shimmering edge and power over life and death had purpose. And it was time to fulfill its purpose. It was time to make the world understand that it doesn't matter what kind of money or origin you have. We are all but pitying figures trapped at the mercy of the knife. And she was the priest to make them all see, and the world her faithful. The city is in a lockdown. Her preferred congregation were indoors and hunkering in fear. A pity as the warmth of the blood made things easier to clean, and the little bits of fur made things easier to peel. Gave hers something to hang on to as they learned so very intimately the power of the knife. Still, she was never one to turn down from a challenge. And a challenge indeed has presented itself. Flesh unseen is there. The empty outfit of a cloaken, of the permanently invisible type, clearly outlining something that is there but forbidden to see. She heard tell they have feathers, and this one is a man too. A different shape for a different prayer, but to the same ultimate God of the glorious knife. She stalks slowly, her form twisting without sound as she rises up behind him, the light pouring from his direction, the hat showing that he's looking the other way. Her hand rises up and the world dissolves into pain. Cut that a little close, Helen, Dis remarks as the insane Jorgwa drops under the administration of the taser. I missed, Helen admits. Excuse me? Her body contorted out of the way of my first taser shot. I missed, Helen admits. Oh, damn, Dis notes. So this is the serial killer they're after. Do they not know how to set up sting operations? Apparently not, so I'm thinking we fully infiltrate. Well, we have been taught to follow our instincts and mine say infiltrate too. Disagrees. So how do we do this? Helen asks. The woman's Milena's profile says species that prefers reptiles, which means we're in. But what game do we? Further conversation is cut off as a police cruiser shines a light at them. Dis starts waving. His seemingly disembodied gloves and empty sleeves grab attention as the police rush over. Stand aside. Milena orders her officers and they part before her, leaving her a direct line towards them. A pair of cloaken who had uncovered the serial killer almost as soon as the lockdowns began. But was it skill or merely good providence? Brahmastra and Shun seemed to be dissolving into open war with each other. Shun blamed Brahmastra for her missing man, and sooner or later she would learn it was Milena herself who had him. But first Brahmastra would buy her time due to her blaming that rocket on Shun thanks to the small collection of men found nearby that had retreated quickly. Pure foolishness, Shun's perversion would not allow her to send her precious toy boys into a dangerous situation. And all this was nothing next to Blythe's sudden strange move of placing a bounty on the man that had infiltrated her base, demanding he be brought to her alive. Whether he was an agent of Brahmastra or Shun mattered little, as the bounty would bring in powerful individuals from the Empire and beyond, drastically altering the situation. She needs to counter. And whether it's dumb luck or raw skill, she could use both. And will. Good afternoon. I am Vatras Milena I understand you two are guests upon my fair world? We are. If this is about the curfew, ma'am, I swear that the invisible variant Cloakin begins and she holds up a hand. The curfew was not for reptiles. As you, my dear Cloakin, are reptilian in nature, it did not apply to you, therefore you are not in trouble. But rather, I am. You are. Yes, I find myself with a dearth of skilled infiltrators and trackers, something that Cloakin are naturally skilled at, she says with a smile. I won't force you two to work for me, but I assure you, I pay very well. And what do you want from us? The illusionist Cloakin asks, her face a combination of the officers in the room and Melena's own. Strangers are coming to this world. I want to know who they are and what they want, Melena states. New jobs? Just like that? The male asks. Oh, what do you think you are? An insidious insect? Oh, no, dear child. I know what a trustworthy person looks like, she states, and both Cloakin look towards each other. Can we have time to talk? I mean, this is rather fast. Of course. I'll allow you both some privacy, she says before leaving the room, certain that they'll accept. After all, it's a galaxy of people against people, and while she is no Cloakin, she is far closer to the Cloakin than nearly any other prospect on this world. Blood will out, she says to herself.